Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are strapping in, metaphorically speaking, and heading for probably the most isolated, most mysterious place left on Earth, Antarctica.
Yeah, definitely the most dangerous, too.
Absolutely. And look, this isn't just going to be about ice and, penguins. This is really about the last frontier that's truly unknown.
We're diving straight into that white abyss, and honestly, it forces you to look at two completely different realities side by side.
How so?
Well, on one hand, you have Antarctica as this land of just verifiable, brutal extremes. It's the coldest, driest, windiest continent, period. That's fact.
Right.
But then the sources we're looking at today, they blend that really harsh geography with, well, ancient mythology, some pretty high-level military secrecy, and these really extraordinary modern whistleblower accounts. Stuff about what might be buried, miles deep under all that ice.
And that's really our mission here today. We've pulled together a stack of sources. It's a mix of cold, hard history, some pretty extreme science, and then this persistent kind of high strangeness.
Yeah.
We need to unpack the deadly truth of the South Pole, but also juxtapose it with these incredible, really persistent theories suggesting it harbors secrets so profound they could, and I'm quoting one of the claims we looked at, shock the entire belief system of humankind.
It's the ultimate paradox, isn't it?
Yeah.
You've got this pristine scientific preserve governed by international treaty, very official, and then right alongside it, these constant rumors of, well, non-human entities, technology way beyond anything we understand, hidden crystal cities, you name it.
So we need to hold both of those ideas up today, look at them clearly, and figure out what you, listening, really need to know about this vast frozen mystery.
Let's do it.
Okay, so let's start unpacking a story that seems to link post-World War II military ops directly to, well, the dawn of the whole modern UFO thing, Operation High Jump. And this wasn't some small research trip.
Oh, not at all. This was, a colossal display of military power, logistical might. Launched very shortly after World War II wrapped up, started in August 1946.
And the guy in charge, Admiral Richard Byrd, not exactly small potatoes.
No, he was an absolute towering figure in U.S. naval history. Yeah. Hugely esteemed officer, famous for being one of the first to fly over both the North and South Poles.
Right, Congressional Medal of Honor recipient, youngest admiral ever in the Navy at the time. I mean, this was a serious guy leading a very serious operation.
And the scale just confirms that seriousness. It was the largest expedition ever sent to Antarctica. We're talking 13 ships, 23 aircraft, and somewhere around 4,700 military personnel.
Wow.
The plan, officially anyway, was to set up research bases, explore the territory over about 4 months, so December 46 through March 47.
And the stated goal?
Well, according to the naval records, it was about investigating sites for potential military bases, testing equipment in extreme cold, standard military stuff for a new frontier.
But here's where the official story kind of takes a weird turn, right? The mission was cut short. Abruptly.
Yeah, way ahead of schedule. By late February 1947, they were recalled. The Navy's official line was rising costs and unexpectedly severe weather, logistical challenges.
Which, okay, Antarctica, severe weather, that tracks. Logistics must have been a nightmare.
Absolutely. That's the counter context we have to keep in mind. Naval records do suggest they hit major snags. The financial strain was getting too much.
What?
But the conspiracy claims, they completely ignore that part. They point instead to something supposedly found in Admiral Byrd's secret diary.
Ah, the secret diary.
This text, which was allegedly discovered by his son after Byrd died, claims the authorities immediately suppressed it. Why? Because the contents were just too disruptive, too world-shattering.
And the claims in this supposed diary are, well, they're staggering. Byrd allegedly wrote that during one of his recon flights deep into the South Pole region, he found an entrance.
An entrance?
An entrance to the hollow center of the Earth.
Okay, right, so not just a cave.
Not just a cave. The account says that as his squadron flew under the ice mass, the landscape just suddenly radically transformed.
Transformed how?
He claimed he saw a temperate, lush green area, an impossible, vibrant world somehow existing beneath the frozen surface of Antarctica. And not just a quick glimpse, the environment supposedly became tropical, warm, inviting.
That's peak high strangeness right there. If he saw tropical conditions, a crystal city, he basically found a hidden world inside our own. That throws out everything we know about geology, geography.
Everything. And the diary apparently goes on to describe who or what was living there.
Yes. Byrd supposedly saw a shimmering rainbow city made of crystal. And then the real encounter started.
How so?
His aircraft was allegedly taken control of remotely by these advanced disc-shaped flying objects,
Right.
classic flying saucers.
Right.
They apparently escorted him to a safe landing zone, took him into this massive cavernous area, and there he met a being he just referred to as the Master.
Okay, hold on. So this highly advanced civilization, maybe inner Earth, maybe ET, living in total secrecy, they just decide to pick Admiral Byrd, a U.S. Navy admiral, as their messenger. Why him?
Yeah.
And why right then, post-WWII?
Well, according to the diary, it was all about the message. The core of this whole encounter was a warning, a rebuke, really.
About what?
The Master supposedly expressed being highly disappointed with humanity. Specifically, our recent use of nuclear weapons, Hiroshima, Nagasaki, had happened just months before.
Ah.
They were apparently really concerned about the damage we were doing to the planet and the danger nuclear proliferation posed, maybe even to their own hidden world.
Okay, if we step back and look at the timing, that is pretty critical. The whole modern UFO era, the sightings, the flaps, it really kicks off right after World War II and those first atomic bombs.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Byrd's supposed 1947 account fits perfectly with thousands of later stories, of non-human beings showing this intense concern about nuclear weapons.
Yeah, you hear those accounts from Air Force officers at missile silos, like Malmstrom Air Force Base, that famous incident where UFOs supposedly showed up and temporarily shut down nuclear missiles.
Right. It suggests it wasn't just an isolated warning to Byrd, maybe, but ongoing monitoring. Activity driven by this deep fear that we could actually destroy ourselves and maybe take them or the planet they rely on with us.
So what happened to Byrd after this alleged encounter, according to the diary?
Well, the ending is kind of predictable, but still chilling. After this unbelievable experience, he was reportedly taken straight to some government compound when he got back to the U.S.
Yeah.
Debriefed intensely.
And told to keep quiet.
Immediately ordered to remain silent.
Yeah.
Told everything he saw, everything he reported was classified. Permanently. No discussion.
And that's why Operation High Jump is still such a lightning rod for these theories, isn't it?
Absolutely. It fuels the idea that the South Pole isn't just a research station. It's something far more critical, maybe an entryway, a portal, something so important it has to be controlled completely by the military and kept secret from all of us at any cost.
Okay, so we've got Byrd maybe finding a secret civilization in the 1940s. But what if this whole mystery goes back way further, like millennia? For a lot of theorists, the hunt for Atlantis, believe it or not, leads straight to Antarctica.
Yeah, that's a big strand in this. The theory basically connects Antarctica to these hypothetical pre-flood, super advanced civilizations, stuff that existed way before our recorded history.
Where does that idea even come from?
Well, the core concept really traces back to Plato. He wrote about the lost continent of Atlantis in his dialogues, Timaeus and Critias, around 360 BC. He claimed it existed about 9,000 years before his time, and that he got the info from Egyptian priests.
Okay, so Plato mentions Atlantis.
Yeah.
How does that connect to ice at the South Pole?
Right, so the theory that got popular, especially with ancient astronaut and lost civilization folks, is the flash frozen idea.
Flash frozen.
Yeah, the concept is that a once thriving civilization, maybe ET, maybe a hyper-advanced human colony, set itself up in Antarctica, back when it was geographically located somewhere warmer, maybe closer to the equator.
And then something catastrophic happened.
Exactly. A sudden, incredibly violent pole shift. The estimate is around 13,000 years ago. This shift was supposedly so massive, so instantaneous, it moved the entire continent to where it is now, under the South Pole ice cap.
Wow. That would take unimaginable energy.
Apocalyptic levels. It would literally flash freeze an entire biosphere. Buildings, animals, technology, maybe even people, just frozen solid in place almost instantly.
That timing, 13,000 years ago, that lines up pretty strikingly with the end of the last ice age, right? The Younger Dryas period. That was a time of really sudden, massive climate disruptions globally.
It does line up, which suggests to theorists that whatever wiped out this alleged Antarctic civilization might have had ripple effects across the entire planet.
So if a civilization was flash frozen, what about structures, buildings? This is where the pyramid theories come in, isn't it?
This is where it gets really fascinating. Tying Antarctica to these global anomalies, specifically pyramids. The theory posits that buried deep in the ice, maybe occasionally peeking out where there's localized melting, is the master pyramid.
The master pyramid.
Yeah, the idea is that this Antarctic structure was the original blueprint, the model for all the other pyramids built later around the world, Egypt, Mexico, everywhere.
And the theory isn't that they were tombs, right? It's something else.
Correct. Not tombs, but power plants. The idea is that pyramids worldwide were deliberately placed using really precise geographic alignments, maybe lightly aligned, to act as massive energy generators.
How would that even work?
Well, the theory describes their geometry being designed to harness the Earth's natural planetary energy fields, maybe focusing that energy up into the capstone.
Okay.
And if you had multiple pyramids charged up globally like this, they could potentially create a huge general standing wave, basically, a form of wireless energy transmission.
Wireless power. For what?
For high technology craft, ancient flying machines, maybe extraterrestrial vehicles, allowing them to navigate and power themselves around the planet without needing, fossil fuels.
Has anyone actually claimed to see one of these pyramids in Antarctica?
There are alleged sightings. One researcher, Joseph White, claimed he discovered a pyramid-like shape near the Shackleton mountain range from aerial photos.
But that throws up a huge problem with mainstream science, doesn't it? If these are man-made structures, how could they possibly exist in a place that geology tells us has been buried under miles of ice for like 12 million years?
That conflict is exactly why proponents of this theory lean so heavily on anomalous historical evidence. Things like that famous Piri-Reis map.
Ah, yes, the Ottoman admiral's map from the 1500s.
Right. Created 500 years ago, it depicts the coastline of Antarctica with startling accuracy, but crucially, it shows it without ice.
Which shouldn't be possible according to the standard timeline.
Exactly. So if that map is somehow reliable, it suggests the whole millions of years of continuous ice cover timeline might be wrong, which would actually support the 13,000-year-old pole shift theory.
Okay, so whether they're 13,000 years old or 12 million, the big question is, are there active structures down there now? Which brings us to more recent reports, right? These high strangeness accounts from military whistleblowers who've actually worked at the South Pole.
Yeah, moving into more modern times, one of the most detailed stories we came across is from a retired Navy SEAL lieutenant commander. He's identified in our sources just as Spartan 1.
Okay.
He shared his experience from what he called a research and reconnaissance mission back in August 2003.
And what did Spartan 1 claim he found?
He said his team came across a massive octagonal structure just poking out of the ice. About 18 feet were visible, the rest buried.
An octagon, not a pyramid.
An octagon. And the physical description is where it gets really, really strange. High strangeness territory.
How so?
The tech features he described are just astonishing. He noted the internal temperature, remember? Outside it's at least minus 40 Fahrenheit. Inside was a comfortable ambient 68 to 72 degrees.
With no obvious heating source.
Apparently not. And the doors were immense, supposedly 18 to 30 feet thick. Yet he claimed he could open them with just the lightest touch, like with one finger.
Wow. Anti-gravity.
Yeah.
Magnetic levitation, something.
Something incredibly advanced, yeah.
Yeah.
And the lighting. He described it as this lime green color, but with no visible light fixtures, no bulbs, no source he could identify. And the walls were apparently lined with unfamiliar hieroglyphics. Nothing earthly he recognized.
That sounds less like a frozen ruin and more like an active, powered, maintained base.
It absolutely does. And if you connect that to another account from a guy identified as Brian, a U.S. Navy flight engineer who served down there between 83 and 97.
At McMurdo Station.
Yeah, in the Antarctic Development Squadron. He shared his story back in 2015, and you start to see this pattern of controlled secrecy maybe emerging.
What did Brian report seeing?
He described repeated incidents where he and his flight crew saw these silver, round, darting objects, UFOs basically, moving with incredible precision between mountain peaks.
Like they were patrolling or observing?
Yeah, he said they'd move as a group to one peak, hover, then zip instantly to another peak. It looked coordinated, intelligent, like monitoring.
Okay.
But the really big moment, the one that seemed to cause trouble, happened during a flight when a sudden medical emergency forced their aircraft right into a designated no-fly zone.
They weren't supposed to be there.
Definitely not. And while they were in that forbidden airspace, they saw it. What he described as a huge, massive, slanted hole going down into the ice, like a cave entrance, but enormous, maybe 200 feet across.
A hole in a no-fly zone. And what happened when they got near it?
The second they approached it, bam. Instruments failed instantly. They lost electrical power, experienced major magnetic anomalies. Everything went haywire.
Whoa.
And when they got back to McMurdo, they were immediately met on the tarmac, not by their usual commanders, but by these men in suits from Washington, D.C.
The classic men in black types.
Sounds like it. The whole crew was severely reprimanded, ordered never to discuss what they saw, and strictly forbidden from ever flying over that hole again. It strongly suggests the military knows exactly what that anomaly is and is desperate to keep it hidden.
It all paints a picture of something active, something guarded. Is there any connection in, like, ancient texts to this idea of a lost polar civilization or catastrophe?
Well, some researchers try to draw a line to the ancient Egyptian Edfu texts.
Yeah.
These are thousands of years old, found in the Temple of Horus at Edfu, and they detail Egyptian creation myths.
What do they say?
They describe the creation of the world by these powerful gods, sometimes called the Elder Ones, who came down from the sky. They established the Island of the Egg, this primordial mound, and built the first temples there. These temples supposedly served as the blueprint for all the later temples built in Egypt itself.
So again, this idea of a foundational, maybe non-human civilization establishing a base.
That's the interpretation. But then the texts describe a great catastrophe, a huge war led by the falcon god Horus against an enemy depicted as a snake called the Great Leaping One.
The Great Leaping One, what was it?
It's described as suddenly appearing in the sky. Its arrival brought darkness, chaos, and these destructive floods that wiped out the sacred island and killed off the original beings, the Elder Ones.
How do people interpret that Great Leaping One?
Well, mainstream interpretation might suggest a natural disaster, maybe a comet impact causing floods and darkness. But fringe theorists, they might suggest it was something else, maybe a deliberate, targeted attack, possibly using advanced weaponry, aimed at destroying this otherworldly civilization that had set up shop, perhaps, on the Antarctic continent when it was warmer.
The scale of destruction described in the Edfu texts. It does sound like the kind of cataclysm needed to flash freeze an entire continent, doesn't it?
It mirrors that level of catastrophe, yeah. It potentially places Antarctica right at the center of some of Earth's oldest, most mysterious recorded events.
Okay, we've gone deep into the strange stuff, hidden cities, ancient wars, UFOs. But it's absolutely vital we ground ourselves now in the brutal, verifiable reality of Antarctica. Let's forget the crystal cities for a minute. The environment itself is just deadly. It's an active enemy.
It is, without question, the most hostile environment on Earth, full stop.
Give us the stats.
Okay, paradoxically, it's the largest desert in the world, but it holds 90% of the planet's ice and about 70% of all the world's freshwater locked up. Temperatures. They can drop below minus 90 degrees Celsius. That's minus 130 Fahrenheit.
Unimaginable.
Yeah, and it's the only continent where search and rescue teams literally have to use rope lines sometimes just to guide people between buildings during sudden blizzards because visibility just drops to absolute zero in seconds.
And it's not just flat ice, right? People picture it flat, but it's not.
Not at all. Antarctica is actually the world's highest continent on average. Average elevation is about 2,500 meters. That's over 8,000 feet above sea level. And that's almost entirely due to the immense thickness and weight of the ice sheet pressing down on the land beneath.
And that height caused problems for early explorers trying to even find it?
Absolutely. That elevation, combined with the ice cliffs, contributed massively to the early struggles. You had explorers like Captain James Cook back in 1773. He crossed the Antarctic Circle, which was huge, but all he saw were these massive icebergs, like a wall. He thought it was just impenetrable ice, turned back, and completely missed the actual landmass hidden behind it.
So who finally confirmed it was a continent?
It wasn't until 1820 when the Russian explorer Bellingshausen managed to get close enough to actually sight the continental landmass that its existence was truly confirmed. It took centuries.
And then there are the winds, not just any winds.
No, these are katabatic winds.
Yeah.
And they are arguably the deadliest phenomenon on the planet. It's not just normal wind caused by weather systems.
So what causes them?
It's basic physics, really. The vast central plateau is incredibly high and incredibly cold. The air sitting above it becomes super dense, super heavy. Gravity just takes over.
Right.
That dense, heavy air accelerates downwards, flowing off the high plateau towards the coast. And these downslope winds reach insane speeds, routinely 200 to 300 kilometers per hour. That's like 125 to 185 miles per hour. Hurricane force, but sustained.
Just trying to stand up in that.
Forget it. When you factor in those winds and the whiteout conditions we'll talk about, you realize the sheer physical battle it is just to exist there, let alone explore a place that feels like it's actively trying to kill you.
And adding to the sheer physical misery is the dryness. You said it's a desert.
The driest desert. Humidity levels often drop below 1%, sometimes as low as 0.03%. This hyper-dry air just sucks moisture out of everything, especially the human body at an alarming rate.
So dehydration is a massive risk.
Huge. And severe, life-threatening frostbite happens incredibly fast. Exposed skin can literally turn black in minutes if it's not protected. And okay, let's say you somehow manage the cold, the wind, the dehydration, you still have to navigate. And that's where other deadly hazards come in.
Like the whiteout.
Exactly. This condition happens when the sky, the clouds, any fog, and the snow-covered ground all merge into one seamless, featureless white void. You completely lose the horizon line.
Total disorientation.
Complete loss of direction, spatial awareness. People literally walk in circles, or worse, stray off an ice cliff or into a crevasse, because they have no reference points at all.
And crevasses. Those are the hidden killers, right?
They're the ultimate unseen hazard. These are deep cracks in the glaciers, often 65 to 100 feet deep, sometimes much more. The terrifying part is they're frequently hidden by a thin, fragile layer of snow called a snow bridge.
So you can't see them until you're falling into one.
Precisely. They're invisible, lethal traps. It's a major reason why explorers who get separated or lost in Antarctica are often just never found. They vanish into the ice. It really cemented the continent's reputation early on as a frozen graveyard.
And that reputation was really sealed by the tragedy of the race to the pole in 1911, wasn't it, Robert Falcon Scott?
Oh, absolutely. That story is the ultimate defining tragedy of human struggle against the Antarctic elements. Scott was driven by this intense nationalistic goal: plant the British flag at the South Pole first. Honor, empire, all that.
But his planning wasn't great compared to his rival.
Deeply flawed, especially compared to the Norwegian Roald Amundsen. Scott's primary failure was really in preparation and maybe mindset. He relied on these heavy experimental motorized sledges which broke down, and Siberian ponies which weren't suited to the deep cold and snow and had to be shot. It was seen as sort of gentlemanly exploration.
Whereas Amundsen
was all about efficiency. Far superior logistics. He used lightweight skis, highly efficient Greenland sled dogs, which the dogs were bred for that work, and he meticulously established supply caches far in advance along his route. Pure pragmatism.
And Amundsen got there first.
He did. Reached the South Pole first, beating Scott's team by about a crushing month.
And Scott's return journey, that's the truly horrific part.
Just a horrifying testament to the continent's cruelty. Scott and his men reached the pole, utterly exhausted, only to find Amundsen's Norwegian flag already flying and a tent with a note inside.
Soul-crushing.
Completely shattered their morale. And the journey back was just this downward spiral of horrors. They were weak, suffering from horrific frostbite, exposure, severe starvation. The weather turned absolutely brutal.
Did any of them make it back?
No. The entire team perished. They died in their tent during a relentless blizzard. Tragically, just 11 miles short of a major supply depot, one-ton depot, that could have saved them.
So close.
Agonizingly close. And we know from Scott's final diary entries found with their bodies that they were forced into the desperate, grim act of eating their sled dogs just to try and survive a few more days.
That whole story just solidified Antarctica's image, didn't it? This beautiful but utterly unforgiving place.
Absolutely. Scott's tent, his body, the bodies of his remaining team were found frozen solid months later by a search party. Their sacrifice just underlined the incredible physical price this land demands. And honestly, that fundamental challenge persists even with all our modern technology today. But despite all those dangers, despite the huge historical cost in human lives, modern tech has opened up Antarctica like never before.
Yeah, it's kind of surprising. The continent isn't just for military or science teams anymore. Tourism has absolutely exploded.
It really has. The numbers have jumped from maybe 5,000 tourists a year a few decades ago to nearly 100,000 today.
Wow. But getting there is still really restricted, right?
Oh, massively. The travel window is incredibly narrow. You can really only go during the 4 Antarctic summer months, basically November to March.
And even then, summer is relative.
Extremely relative. Even during that peak season, the temperatures are still harsh. Maybe livable is the word. Around -15 to -20 Celsius. That's still below 0 Fahrenheit.
And it costs a fortune.
Prohibitively expensive for most people. You're looking at something like $15,000 US for just a one-day flyover trip.
15 grand for one day.
Yep. Or upwards of $105,000 for a week-long cruise expedition. And that's before you even factor in the legendary misery of crossing the Drake Passage between South America and the Antarctic Peninsula, often called the roughest stretch of water in the world. Constant storms, huge waves.
Right, and then there's the weird daylight cycle.
Yeah, that's unique to the poles. During that summer travel window, because of the Earth's tilt, the South Pole is tilted towards the sun, so you get continuous daylight 24 hours a day, or at least this kind of eternal twilight near the beginning and end of the season.
But then the opposite happens in winter.
Exactly. 6 months later, the polar night descends. Total pitch-black darkness. The sun never gets above the horizon for half the year. and the temperatures plummet down to those -80, -90 Celsius levels. Just brutal isolation.
The main hub for the U.S. presence is McMurdo Station, right? That's the big one.
That's the biggest settlement on the continent by far, established back in 1956. During the summer peak, it could house up to 1,200 residents, scientists, support staff, military personnel.
And it's apparently like a small town.
It's truly a feat of logistics. It feels less like a remote outpost and more like a small, self-contained, slightly weird town. It actually has an ATM, believe it or not.
Yeah.
A hospital, a gym, stores.
An ATM in Antarctica.
Yep. But the operational side is just staggering. McMurdo's entire existence depends on a single, massive annual resupply operation, usually by ship and aircraft.
Once a year.
Once a year. All the food, especially perishables, all the fuel, all the equipment and supplies for the entire year had to come in during that short summer window.
That's beneath waste. What do they do with all the trash from 1,200 people?
Waste management is equally monumental. They have a pretty complex recycling system on site for things like metal and glass. But all the non-recyclable solid waste has to be carefully collected, packaged up, and shipped all the way back to the United States for disposal.
Seriously?
Yep. Environmental protection protocols are strict. Liquid sewage waste, however, is treated and then, controversially, released directly into the ocean offshore.
And power. How do you power a town in the middle of nowhere like that?
Power has always been a huge headache down there. The U.S. actually tried to solve it by installing a small nuclear power plant back in the 60s, ran from 1962 to 1972.
A nuclear reactor in Antarctica.
Yeah, PM3A. But it turned out to be a total failure. It had to be shut down permanently due to structural damage and, critically, radioactive leaks caused by the extreme cold compromising the containment structures. Big cleanup job.
Hey, so what do they use now?
Today, the entire station, all its heating, electricity, vehicles, runs on massive amounts of imported diesel fuel. Huge carbon footprint, ironically.
And internet. Can you stream Netflix at the South Pole?
Forget about it. Internet access is severely limited. It's typically only available for maybe 4 or 5 hours a day, and it comes via these low-bandwidth Iridium satellites. It's mostly restricted to essential emails, basic communications, uploading scientific data. Real-time communication is tough.
That isolation must be intense.
It really is. And some whistleblowers point to that limited communication as an effective tool, actually, for maintaining secrecy if something unusual were happening. It's hard to get information out quickly or reliably.
Yet, despite that isolation, the science being done there is genuinely cutting-edge, world-class stuff.
Absolutely. Critical work happens there. Antarctica is, counterintuitively maybe, the best place on the entire planet for certain types of astronomical research.
Why is that? Better than mountaintops?
Yes, for specific things. It comes back to that extreme dryness. The high central plateau is the driest place on Earth. Now, water vapor in the atmosphere creates noise. Yeah. It absorbs and interferes with certain astronomical signals, certain wavelengths of light. In Antarctica, that water vapor is almost completely absent. Combine that with a high altitude and stable atmosphere, and scientists get the clearest, most unobstructed views of deep space possible from the ground.
What kind of research does that enable?
It's essential for studying things like the cosmic microwave background radiation, the faint afterglow of the Big Bang, and for understanding dark matter and dark energy, the mysterious stuff that makes up 95% of the universe. Facilities like the Big South Pole Telescope were absolutely crucial in gathering the data needed to capture that first ever image of a black hole a few years ago.
Wow. Okay. What else are they studying?
All sorts of vital things. Climate modeling is huge, trying to understand the terrifying speed of ice melt in certain areas and predict sea level rise. Studying the evolution of unique organisms that survive in those extreme, cold, dark environments. And paleobotany, digging through ice cores and rock layers to piece together how Antarctica was actually a green, forested continent millions of years ago, like 350 million years back. That gives crucial insight into Earth's long-term climate history.
But this pristine research haven is sitting on top of a potential gold mine, isn't it? You mentioned resources earlier.
A massive one. Geologists have confirmed the presence of vast mineral deposits, coal, and crucially, oil. Recent estimates suggest there could be as much as 511 billion barrels of oil under the ice and offshore.
511 billion, that's huge. That's like Middle East levels.
It's the largest single potential reserve identified outside the Middle East, a monumental amount of fossil fuel.
So why isn't everyone rushing down there to drill?
Because of the international agreements. The 1959 Antarctic Treaty, which was later reinforced by the 1991 Protocol on Environmental Protection, basically put the entire continent off limits.
What do the treaties say?
They're pretty absolute. No military activities allowed. Antarctica is reserved for peaceful purposes only. And crucially, Article 7 of the Environmental Protocol bans any activity relating to mineral resources other than scientific research.
Yeah.
So no mining, no drilling, no commercial extraction is permitted, period.
And scientific findings have to be shared.
Yes, that's another key part. All scientific research findings must be made publicly available and shared freely among nations. It's meant to be a continent for science, not for profit or conflict.
And the underlying reason for protecting it so fiercely is self-preservation, basically.
Pretty much. The unspoken reason for this strict protection is simple. If nations gave in to greed, started exploiting those resources on a large scale, the environmental damage would be catastrophic. The ice would melt faster, sea levels would rise dramatically, and it would trigger a global disaster. It's a game-over scenario for coastal cities worldwide.
But even without drilling, the continent's environment is still incredibly fragile, right? It's already under threat.
Hugely fragile, and yes, under increasing threat from external pressures. Because the ecosystem is so small, so isolated, and highly specialized, it's incredibly vulnerable. That's why the rules for tourists and even researchers are so strict.
Like what kind of rules?
Tour operators have to follow guidelines from IATO, the International Association of Antarctica Tour Operators. Things like the don't pack a pest policy. You have to meticulously clean and disinfect your outer clothing, boots, bags, before going ashore to avoid introducing foreign microbes, seeds, or insects.
Wow.
You're forbidden from sitting down or even urinating on the ground in many areas because the unique, delicate soil crusts and moss beds need total protection. Any disturbance can have long-lasting impacts.
Are these measures working? Are threats getting through?
Unfortunately, they're already failing to some extent. Modern threats are infiltrating. Just recently, the highly pathogenic H5N1 avian flu has been confirmed in seabirds, like skuas, and even in seals in the South Shetland Islands near the peninsula.
The avian flu in Antarctica.
Yeah. It demonstrates just how quickly a foreign virus can arrive and potentially spread through that interconnected but ultimately naive ecosystem. The animals there have no natural immunity to many outside diseases.
And then there's the really scary prospect. The stuff frozen in the ice itself.
Exactly. The zombie virus threat, as the media likes to call it. Because the ice sheet has acted like a giant deep freeze for millions of years, scientists are certain that ancient viruses, bacteria, fungi, pathogens we know nothing about are locked away dormant in the permafrost and deep ice layers.
Have they actually found any?
Oh, yeah. Viable infectious viruses have already been revived from Siberian permafrost that are tens of thousands of years old, like Pithovirus sibericum, found in 30,000-year-old permafrost, which is a giant virus unlike anything circulating today.
So if the Antarctic ice melts significantly?
If the Antarctic permafrost thaws and the ice melts on a large scale, these ancient microbes could be released back into the environment. Humans, animals, plants today would have zero immunity to them. They could trigger new pandemics, cause unforeseen ecological shifts.
Yeah.
It's a massive biological unknown.
Which brings us right back around full circle to the melting mystery and those hidden civilization theories. You mentioned earlier that the melting isn't uniform.
Right. It's complex.
Yeah.
While the massive East Antarctic ice sheet seems relatively stable, maybe even gaining a bit of mass overall, about 82 billion tons a year, according to some studies,
Okay.
West Antarctica and the Antarctic Peninsula are melting rapidly. The West Antarctic ice sheet has been losing around 60 cubic kilometers of ice per year since 2009. That's a huge amount, contributing significantly to sea level rise.
So why the big difference? Why is the West melting so fast?
Mainstream science points to factors like warmer ocean currents eating away at the ice shelves from below and changing atmospheric patterns.
But the conspiracy theory offers another explanation.
The persistent alternative theory remains. Could this localized, intense melting in the West be caused, at least partly, by geothermal heat, or even heat generated by actively maintained underground cities? Or maybe operational extraterrestrial bases down there, keeping their structures powered up, expanding, and inadvertently melting the ice directly above them.
So the very catastrophe the world is trying to prevent the melting ice could actually be the very thing that ends up revealing whether these incredible secrets buried beneath it are real or not.
Exactly. The melting ice could be the key that unlocks the whole mystery, one way or another. #outro.
Wow. Okay, so this deep dive, it really forces us to hold two completely opposing ideas in our heads at the same time, doesn't it?
It really does. You have the verifiable reality, this place of deadly, brutal geographic extremes, but also a place of absolutely groundbreaking critical science.
Right. And layered right on top of that, you have these incredibly persistent, often compelling narratives of hidden crystal cities, ancient alien tech, secret government cover-ups, stretching all the way from Admiral Byrd in the 40s right up to these modern whistleblower accounts we talked about today.
What really stands out to me is that deep, profound human curiosity that drives both sides of the story.
How do you mean?
Well, the same relentless drive that pushes explorers to risk everything, to cross the Drake Passage, to face death in the blizzards. That's fundamentally the same imaginative drive that produces these enduring myths of hidden masters and lost worlds beneath the ice. Antarctica just forces us to confront both our absolute physical limits and the furthest reaches of our imagination.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And we've seen how the current international system, the treaties, they're desperately trying to maintain this fragile balance, right? Protect the environment, keep the peace, but also allow for vital scientific discovery.
But the pressure is definitely mounting. You've got the undeniable hunger for resources, especially that oil on one side, and the accelerating impacts of climate change on the other. Something's got to give eventually.
So ultimately, we're left with a choice, aren't we? Believe Antarctica is just a very cold, very important scientific preserve, or believe it's guarding one of the planet's biggest secrets buried under miles of ice and silence.
That's the core question.
Which leads us to the final provocative thought for you listening to really chew on. If Antarctica is being protected so fiercely, specifically because of the global catastrophe that melting its ice would unleash, how long can those international treaties realistically hold back human greed or even just pure curiosity if that melting ice actually starts to visibly reveal things? What happens if ruins or strange technological artifacts or even crashed extraterrestrial crafts start poking through the ice? What does the world do when that potential game over scenario literally starts to see the light of day?